My name is Kayla Wiley, and I am a student at Butler Community College who is currently working towards obtaining a degree in elementary education. Today I'm at Meadowlark Elementary holding an interview with Principal Miss Dana Matheny. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak with you today.
Absolutely.
So my first question for you is, how long have you been a principal and how long did you teach before becoming an administrator?
Okay. Well, this question always stumps me, which it shouldn't, because I have to calculate every year. So I was a classroom teacher. I have a degree in early childhood education and a master's degree in educational leadership. So I got I worked in a first grade classroom for 7 years and then took a couple of years off when I had my daughter. And then I became kind of like an instructional coach for a couple of years. And then I was an assistant principal, this was all in Oklahoma, an assistant principal at a school of about 2,000 kids.
Oh, wow.
So we had 4 assistants and 1 head principal. So the assistant principal job was about the same size as the building we have here. So I spent 6 years doing that. And then I moved to Wichita, and I spent 2 years, one as an assistant principal in Wichita and one as a principal. And then I'm completing my 6th year here. So 12, 13, 14 years as a principal, 7 years as a classroom teacher or 9 years as a classroom teacher and coach.
Wow, you've been doing this a long time.
I have.
That's awesome.
I'm hitting that 25-year mark.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know.
So what made you choose the teaching profession originally?
You know what? This is one of those questions I almost really feel for people. I have a daughter who's going to college next year, and I really feel for her because she thinks she wants to go into business, but she doesn't 100% know. I literally have never thought about doing anything but teaching.
Really?
Ever since I was in kindergarten. And I even asked my parents, I'm like, did I not know there were other things I could do? I think it's just something that I've just kind of ingrained to do.
Yeah.
So it's always just kind of been that path. I don't think I would have necessarily thought that I would have. I think maybe I've always kind of knew elementary school would be more of the fit than middle school or high school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think I knew that I would like the early childhood age. More of the K-3 is kind of like what I really, really love.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the 4th and 5th graders to a degree, but that's not my passion or
Yeah,
my love.
your
And
niche.
So I tell people all the time, a good teacher can really teach any grade. It's just a matter of finding really where you feel passionate and your comfort level.
Yeah.
So really my whole life I wanted to be a teacher. And I do feel like if I were to poll staff, I would say 90% of them would say, I've always wanted to be a teacher. And then you're going to have maybe 10% that were like, well, I thought I wanted to do this. Or maybe 10% would say they went into something different than teaching.
Yeah.
And then switch their mind. Some people think they want to be firefighters, when they're 2
Yeah.
years old, or that kind of thing. So, so it's been something I've always wanted to do.
I'm not gonna lie, I've gone a little back and forth because I'm a little scared about teaching sometimes because of all the scary things you hear online.
Right.
So I was scared of it, and so that all that online stuff deterred me from it for a while. And I tried other things, but they did not.
It didn't feel
No.
It didn't feel like the passion.
And then
you have.
I came in here to do my observations, and I was like, "Oh no, this is it! This is it!" Well, it was like, yeah.
This is what I tell people, and this is what I tell a lot of the Butler students: is I tell them, you need to find a job that you forget you're getting paid for. So I literally forget most of the time that I'm getting up and going to work.
Oh wow.
It's just what I do every day.
Yeah.
And there's days that you're like, oh gosh, I don't, but it's not, I've worked at a bank before, when I was in middle school, high school, and I remember sitting there like watching the clock tick. Some people, that is their niche, and they wake up excited to go to work. My husband's an accountant. He would never in a million years dream of doing my job. I would never imagine doing his job.
Yeah.
So I really do think you've got to kind of follow your heart and listen to that. And it's discouraging. I've had the last couple days, I've been pretty discouraged with just what I feel like is happening in society is kind of infusing into our schools. Yeah. And what do we do with that? And that's been hard for me. And it's hard when we have a population of parents. Most of our parents leave us alone and let us do our job, but then you have other people that they think they know what they're talking about. You're like, we're the professionals, and what you're saying is actually not accurate. Mm-hmm. And having to be combative with that kind of stuff is hard, and to kind of defend your profession can be frustrating and hard. So, but I would rather defend something I'm passionate about and work on something I'm passionate about than something I'm not.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
And education's not going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's not going to go away. It's like healthcare. It's not going to go away.
Yep.
Maybe the way in which we educate people is going to change, but education is not going to go
It's
away.
always going to be there. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah. It's just the online stuff can be overwhelming sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
So, and
Absolutely.
all I see are like videos of like teachers like complaining, and I'm
Exactly.
like, oh no. And
Exactly.
that's why I was really scared. But I'm less scared now
Good.
after like taking my class and
Exactly.
like coming in my observations.
Exactly.
I'm like, I really like this.
Yeah.
Like, I
and you
really
have to take
like
it all with a grain of salt. It's kind of like, you know, I don't know personally if I could be working in, I know for me, I'm better in a suburban environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes people feel guilty about that because they think, oh, I'm supposed to be in this environment with more at-risk,
Yeah.
you know, lower income kids, and that's really where the difference can happen. And I worked in that for 2 years when I was in Wichita, and actually I feel like I'm more of a difference maker here because I do feel like I have different kind of partnerships with families.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the mobility. Kids are not moving in and out of buildings every day.
Yeah.
So then you have to find, even within education, you have to find what am I passionate about. So am I passionate about, you know, coming alongside kids that are more affluent and supporting them and dealing with the parents that are trying to tell you what to do?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you work in an area that is more at risk and you are helping make sure they have their basic needs met? You know, and so it's not harder, they're just different. And so I think that within that too, within even the world of education, you have to figure out, okay, what is the clientele I want to work with, what's the age group I want to work with. And then I tell people when I interview people too, you're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing you. And 9 times out of 10, every single person we interview is a good quality candidate to be a teacher. It may just not be the right fit for a grade level, if that makes sense. So like I am anticipating having a couple of positions next year. Well, I know which grade levels I could put a brand new first year teacher because there's going to be good mentor teachers.
Yeah.
I also know which grade levels I can't do that. You know, maybe there's already teachers that don't have as much experience to come alongside that person. And so it's not necessarily that the person isn't good and qualified. It may just not be what we're looking for that position in that grade level.
You got to have the right environment.
You've got to have the right environment. And then it's also the same if you interview and you don't get that vibe or that feel, don't do it.
Yeah.
So.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So we kind of are...
A little
bit.
I can readdress if you want me to.
But what advice can you give me to better prepare me for the teaching profession?
The best advice is ask questions and be okay with reflecting and processing with somebody. So find somebody you trust. So whether it's a mentor teacher or it's your administrator, if it's the counselor, be okay with coming and sitting down and saying, okay, I don't know what to do about this. I do that every day. I've done this for 25 years and I'm like, what do you think we should do about this?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about collaborating with each other and working together. And so I highly recommend that. And feel okay to ask the questions, because a lot of times your questions are questions that other people have. And then sometimes that question will spur other people to think and do things that they may not have ever considered doing too.
Yeah, so, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that I will face as a new teacher? What are the rewards in teaching? And could you provide me with specific examples from your own teaching experience or from some of the teachers you supervise?
Sure. Okay. So when thinking about a first-year teacher, I mean, the nice piece about that is that any educator has had a first year. So we all know what that feels like, and it's hard. And it's also highly rewarding, and most people will never forget the first year they taught. They're never going to forget it because they're muddling through a lot of things. I think one of the biggest challenges I look at and I kind of worry about is just classroom management. Mm-hmm. And that is because until you're a teacher and you've had your own classroom, you're often managing based upon, when you're student teaching, you're managing based upon kind of the systems that were put in place by your mentor. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Or you're subbing. And so some of those processes and procedures where you turn work in is already set. Kids know, you may say go turn the work in. Well, kids know where to go turn the work in.
Yeah.
So it's when you are starting your own where you're having to really kind of figure out what are the processes and procedures I want to create. What is the environment I want it to look like? It doesn't have to look like your mentor teachers. It doesn't, So we have a first year teacher this year, and honestly, her management's impeccable. It's still going to change. She's still going to continue, modifying and changing those things. Yeah. I think for new teachers also, you have not had they always talk about, begin with the end in mind, and you kind of work backwards. So if my end goal is that kids understand place value, what am I going to do to help them get to understand place value? But when you've never really experienced the end, it's hard to backtrack and know how to make sure that happens. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so what I've seen even with our first year teacher this year is I've said to her, there's portions of this math curriculum and there's portions of this concept that you're teaching that you may realize when the year ends, I spent too much time on that concept. I didn't spend enough time on that concept, but you don't have that experience yet to help gauge you.
Yeah.
So those are kind of big in terms of management, in terms of curriculum. I mean, to me, I want to find somebody that's passionate about teaching. Mm-hmm. You can hand somebody can learn how to teach place value. But if management's not in place, it doesn't matter how great of an instructor you are, you have to be able to manage the classroom and have their attention. Yeah. So obviously the rewards, I mean, I think the number one reward is relationships, the relationships you build with kids that are long lasting. I mean, I have some Facebook friends with kids that are now in their late 20s because they were my teacher. I mean, I taught them. Mm-hmm. So those rewards are ones that are just like completely priceless, Yeah. I think interactions with colleagues is really rewarding. I think often, let's say you go work, like my husband, you go work in his business. He's the accountant. He has somebody else that's in HR. You have somebody else that's in marketing. So they're all working under the umbrella of business, but their specialty and their love is different. Mm-hmm. As educators, we really are, our product are kids.
Yeah.
And so we're all kind of working for the same goal. And so I often feel like we're often like-minded. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I have friends here too.
Yeah.
Not just colleagues.
Yeah.
And like just examples from others that I have supervised. I think sometimes there can be a little bit of a challenge when you get out of school and just feeling comfortable communicating with parents. Mm-hmm. That can be intimidating. And I often say, if you can build that relationship with a parent just in a positive way, when you do need them for something else, they're going to understand you and have your back.
Yeah.
But there just happens to be, and that just comes with experience. I have confidence now in communicating back with parents because I do have the experience that's kind of given me footing, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think that can be, sometimes kind of a challenge. For my own teaching experience too, is trial and error. I mean, I remember doing an activity one time where we were using some kind of beans. I don't remember what we were doing. Well, I was supposed to give the kids like 10 beans. Well, I piled these little first grade desks up with like hundreds of beans, and they were supposed to be counting beans, and they were all crying. And it was finally one of those, I was like, let's all throw this project away and move on, And so it's just being okay with trying things and being willing to say, that didn't work, or yes, that worked great, or I want to try this next time. It's kind of one thing I think with new teachers is just them giving them permission to try things and to figure out what their, the way you might want to line up your kids. It may not feel, if you modeled exactly how your mentor teacher lines up kids at the door and it doesn't feel right, it's not going to be effective. Mm-hmm. So you have to find, yes, we need to have a process for lining kids up at the door, but maybe, hi Emily. Sure. But maybe you have to do it in a different manner. So, hold on just a second.
You're all right.
All right, there we go, Emily. Okay. All right, you're welcome. So that kind of, hopefully that got that for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So what does professionalism mean to you? What qualities do you seek in a new teacher, and how can I stand out during the application, interview, and hiring process after I earn my teaching license?
Okay, so just professionalism to me, I mean, I think you can look at it, I think the first thing sometimes people think about is just like the way you carry yourself. Mm-hmm. I think the way you carry yourself is definitely identifies professionalism. Mm-hmm. I think, dress, it depends on, what's professional in this setting. I mean, I'm wearing jeans and a sweatshirt today. It's Spirit Day, mm-hmm. But I don't need to be in heels and a suit.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean that you're more professional if you're coming in with heels and a suit, because I might be questioning, like, are you really able to get on the floor with your kids when you're in the heels and suit?
Yeah.
So professional, I mean, I think it's also just being a good listener. It's someone is able to be highly reflective, mm-hmm. Someone that is willing to ask questions, that's collaborative, that wants to work as a team. This is very team oriented. And so we have enough pushback from the society, from parents, from kids. We have to be a united team. And so I think that's what I look for in somebody that has that level of like get up and go and willingness to just to dig in and try and figure things out. And so standing out in terms of like the application interview process, I've been kind of, to be honest with you, I've been surprised because I feel like there's so many tools in which to make a nice looking resume. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the quality of the resumes I'm seeing, not even the content of the resumes, but just visually how the resume looks, has been kind of poor. And so sometimes I'll skip over it because I'm like, it looks like they just went onto a Word document and just typed some different things. Like, make it look prettier. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And there's tools to do that for you, and it makes it super easy. That I've been super surprised about that. And then I also think in terms of standing out, I mean, I think it's important to be timely in getting your application in. So it's normally, like I tell people, January-ish, February, or even maybe a little bit before for school districts, you want to start getting your application in, because a lot of our district happens to be a little bit later than some. But we can't really interview somebody. We can't interview somebody until their application's online. Mm-hmm. And then to help you stand out even more than that is I also recommend for people just to email principals. Don't come to the building. Like if you were to just walk in today and say, hey, do you have time? Can I sit down and interview with you? I could probably make time, but I'd probably be a little frustrated. Yeah. You took the time to email me ahead of time. I was able to put it on my calendar. I was able to block some time out. Does that make sense? Yeah. So people just stopping by and saying, hey, I want to hand you my resume, that wears me out. It may not wear other people out, but I do not get worn out if I get an email from somebody that says, hey, I wanted to attach my resume and let you know I'm interested in any positions you might have. Yeah. It jogs my memory of that person's name. I can print their resume. I can put it somewhere safe. Even if I don't have a position, I may. Yeah. So that's one way I feel like that you really can kind of stand out. Mm-hmm. And I think also just in interviews, we know when we're interviewing new teachers, they don't have the experience. But I think as much as you can get out and observe people like you're doing and like you're expected to do in classes, that's provides you insight. So I don't expect a new teacher to tell me they may tell me how they think they want to set up their first day of school based upon when I observed this, when I observed this, when I observed this. You're not going to know for sure. Mm-hmm. But having those experiences, you're not just regurgitating something you read in a book, but you're like, well, what I did see that I didn't like was this. What I saw that I did like was this. Mm-hmm. And you're able to bring, all that together. Yeah. So hopefully I got that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, my teachers, they do that a lot, like some of the ones at Butler. One of my math teachers, she'll tell us, she's like, the book says this, but we're going to do it like this.
Exactly.
And we're like, okay.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so they're deviating and realizing, okay, what really needs... This is going to be more impactful if we take it and do it this way.
Yeah, because she's like, it's going to be harder for you guys to understand if we do it how the book says it.
Exactly. So, that's cool. Well, can you give me an example? Can you think of something particular?
Well, I can think maybe, so we were doing this one thing, it's all college algebra. I forgot what it was.
So it wasn't even a teaching class necessarily?
No, it was my algebra class.
Okay.
She was teaching us... some kind of it was some kind of graph thing. Gotcha. And so she's like, so when the graph looks like this, we're going to color in the house. When the graph looks like that, we're going to color outside the house.
Gotcha. Yeah, it just kind of relates it to real world, kind of the connection. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And
for people to be able to see, I think about this sometimes in measurement. I mean, if you want to be a welder, if you want to be a construction worker, you got to know fractions. You have to know measurement. Yep. For people to see that, what I'm doing, it really does carry over into do I use measurement and fractions often? No. But I'm not in a world where that's necessary. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm in a world where I have to be able to have good communication skills and good relational skills. And so it's just helping kids see that, okay, what are students in college seeing, okay, this is how I can apply this and help me understand by connecting it to something else, which is cool.
Yeah, I was watching a video, I think it was in my teaching class, where we were watching a video about this teacher he was a math teacher as well. He was teaching his kids something, but he was teaching it in the form of so they were measuring the stairs out, and they had to figure out how to how it fit into the code of the school or something like that. And it was like, oh, okay, so you're applying it to real life things.
Totally.
So
it's interesting. Yeah.
It's really cool.
It is cool. It is super cool.
I like it when teachers do that.
Exactly.
I feel like it makes a lot more sense to me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that. That's awesome.
So what changes, if any, would you make to the educational system?
Okay, yeah. Funding says, okay, yeah. I think I think funding is always an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a kind of a misconception when you're a school district like Andover that we have these beautiful facilities, and these beautiful facilities are because of bond issues we passed that directly are related to people's property taxes. So the funding we actually receive from the state is far less than more at-risk communities. Now, they probably need more funds to provide different services. So it's sometimes a misconception that you could look at them and go, oh, that's a rich district, so they've got lots of money, which when we really don't.
Yeah.
So we have to do more with less. So that's one thing. I think funding is always going to be, not necessarily something to change, but it's always going to be a topic of conversation. I think teacher retention is one of my biggest worries, is how do we keep teachers in this profession because of the burnout rate?
Yeah.
And it's real, and it's most of the time people don't go into teaching because they think they're going to make a lot of money. So most people are not leaving the profession because they're not making enough money. Yeah. Does that make sense? They're leaving because of just all the stuff that they're having to deal with that are just, and I also feel like anymore there's so many of these political groups, our state legislators, whoever, that are kind of dictating how we should do things.
Yeah.
And while there should be some checks and balance, for example, there's been talk about, at the beginning in June or July, we are to have lesson plans for the entire school year, let's say, to the State Board of Education. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not good practice on July 5th for us to already know what we're going to be doing on November 5th.
Yeah.
We're working with kids. We have to reteach, we have to accelerate, we have to do different things. And so sometimes it's like, stay out of our way and let us do our work.
Yeah.
That's one piece. State assessments, we're actually in the middle of doing state assessments right now. And I treat state assessments like a dipstick. It's one more picture about a kid. We could have some of our kids right now that they're taking state assessments and they don't care. They're clicking through. They don't care. It means nothing to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times we say, guys, this is so great. This is showing the state how much you know about this. They don't care. So it's a picture. So I don't put tons of value into that, nor do I put all my value into our formative assessments that we do here. It's a piece. So we look at formative assessments, we look at state assessments, we look at classroom observations, we look at daily work. All of those pieces kind of make up the picture of the kid. And so sometimes, and I feel like it's switched, but it used to be that so much emphasis was placed on state assessments to the detriment of kids, to where it's like, well, if you didn't pass your state assessment, you don't go into fourth grade. Well, how do you know that kid that took that state assessment was up all night because they had a family crisis? They might have a learning disability. They weren't into it. They don't care. Yeah. There's so many factors, and so we can't just clump one assessment to determine the quality of a kid.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I grew up in a home where we didn't always have like the power on and everything, or food on the table, and
it impacts your way of learning.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And I tried my best.
Right.
I remember I was very dedicated as a student, like really dedicated.
Yeah.
I remember I would, like, when we didn't have the power on, I'd go out under the street lamps and do my homework there. And it's just like, but some kids, they have to work harder, or some kids just don't want to because it's too much.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Your perspective and your upbringing you will have other kids that can relate to you, and you'll be able to share that I can't relate to that. I can't relate to go standing under a light pole and doing homework, and you will be able to have compassion for kids in a different way than other people could too, which is cool.
I think so, definitely. If you could choose another career field, would you? I have a feeling I know this answer.
Yes, I would not. Within the career, I love this role because I love the variety that the principal job has. So I love that I'm dealing with like a special education situation, but I can also go down the hallway and help a kiddo that has needs and behavior concerns. I work with brand new teachers. I work with with college students. So the variety is vast, which I love. As I've continued in this work more, I tend to realize that I really have a heart for making sure that our special education kids are getting what they need, and that we're providing them the least restrictive environment. So you'll learn a lot about that. We want to provide kids with the least restrictive environment for them to be successful. And so that's really, I've become more passionate about, and I love, I thought about going, when I was working on my master's for administration, I thought about being a school psychologist because I love the analyzation of their testing and that kind of thing. But I realized it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of analyzing the data. I like to look at the data once it's been done, if that makes sense. I don't necessarily want to do the testing or creating the report. So I like to help look and hear from what the school psychologist is seeing that. So counseling, I think back when I was in high school, I thought, well, maybe I want to be a counselor, like a therapist, but it was kind of fleeting. But it's always been more in the soft skill kind of realm, people person kind of job. So
I went through that too, where I was like, oh, do I want to be a therapist? And I thought about that for a long time, but ultimately I was like, because I wanted to be a kid's therapist. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. And then I was like, I don't know, something's not
clicking. And I am a therapist a lot of school. I mean, I don't have the credentials to be a therapist, but I work with kids all the time. I mean, we're working with social emotional things all the time, and we seek out therapists or we refer people to therapists. I mean, we're constantly in those, gauging how they are social emotionally. So I mean, it's within the realm for sure. So
it makes sense. So I guess my last question is, are there any other comments you want to add to the interview?
Just like I said, good luck, and just follow your heart, and just you're going to see a lot of the bad stuff out there, but there's a lot of good stuff happening too. So
I heard an important thing from someone once. They're like, you're going to see like everyone posting about bad things because everyone wants to talk about the bad things, but no one talks about the good things.
Exactly.
And so, that's the main
and
problem.
keeping things lighthearted, and I just love that. I think about this, like if you have to go to court, like to the courthouse, and I just think, oh, I would never want to be an attorney that's having to walk into a courthouse where it's kind of like constant contention. Now, an attorney might view that gives them like energy because they'd like to help fight a battle for somebody. Not what I love to do. Does that make sense? But I love to come here and come alongside kids. Where, like I said, my husband, he's like, it would drive me crazy if I talked to kids all day long. And so it's about everybody finding kind of their niche and what gives them energy and passion, what they're passionate about.
It makes sense.
So,
my husband's going into engineering, and he's like, I could never dream of working in a school.
Isn't that funny? It's just interesting, and that's why there's so many different careers and things. Nice. So anyway, awesome. Well, okay, I got that all done for you.
Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
I'm so glad it worked out. And now do you have to write